Let's start with this Lakers-Wolves game last night because that was fun. That was fun. I was having too much fun watching the Lakers embarrass themselves until about, I don't know, 8 minutes left in the game. I realized, like, wait a minute, I want the Lakers to win. I want this Lakers-Grizzlies matchup, right? And so then I kind of like flipped and it was weird. But yeah, that's what it's about right there. And, I think it was Nick Wright that claimed the Clippers should have tanked into the play-in so they didn't have to see the Suns. You never want to play in the play-in. You never want to, right? And unless you're on the other end of it and you've just got in. But there's various reasons, and I think that Wolves-Lakers game was a perfect example of why, no matter what, you don't want to find yourself in one of these games. It starts off and all of a sudden Torian Prince looks like Paul George. And you're like, oh boy, here we go. It's a one-off, right? And then I think the second element of anything can happen, any player can get hot, is the likelihood that one of your players is going to get chipped up is extremely high because it essentially is a one-off in a game 7 type environment where guys are selling out on the floor and there's just a level of physicality and urgency that you don't even see in early playoff games. So those two elements are why you always want to avoid a play-in. But yeah, that was fun. That was fun. And, you heard the TNT boys last night say, well, the Lakers, they thought they were just going to coast through this Wolves team. That's not what I saw. I saw a Wolves team come out and just punch them in the mouth. I want to give credit to the Wolves and how they've responded to the controversy. And the truth of the matter is, it seems like Rudy has galvanized them. I think there was an element last night of them coming out like, we don't need Rudy. Watch, we can do this without him type of thing, right? But I also think an element of the Gobert suspension was the Cat and him still can't play together. Cat's been out most of the year. They still can't play together. So it was kind of an either or thing that they had to choose anyway. So they sent him away, and we got a hell of a matchup, right? Let me shout out today's sponsor, So Rare NBA, for sponsoring today's video and setting up the Athletic Alchemy Private League, where you can compete against me and others in the community to win prizes like tickets to games, autographed jerseys. It's the future of fantasy sport. Playoffs just started. Don't forget to go pick up your daily drop and add to your card deck because some players are no longer eligible, right? And you just want to have that versatility. You can see my pick today. Dragic's on the Bucks. When did that happen? I immediately want to pick my Warrior, but I don't know if we're going to see Andre again this season. So I guess I'm going to go Seth Curry here for this 3-6 matchup in round 1 moving forward. Anyway, link in the description. Join my Athletic Alchemy League. You can win gift card, tickets to games, and compete against me. I guess let's start with the two Kentucky number 1 picks, the big men, Towns and AD, the matchup. And it was a good back and forth for the first half, right? And I guess those guys are friends. I didn't know they text each other during the season, each other's boo-boos. And they also call each other by their first name. He's like, oh, Anthony. That looked like it hurt. He's like, I know, Carl. When I had that, I was out 3 weeks. All right, I'm done roasting those two. But as you might suspect, Towns foul trouble and it just his aggression fizzled out as the game went on. Whereas AD, it took him a while to get going. That's kind of who they are as players. Towns will come out like gangbusters, and then as the game goes on, he tends to fizzle. Where AD, sometimes he'll have a big first quarter, but usually it's like, where's AD? Where's AD? Right? And then the second half, he starts to get going. And that's kind of what you saw in that matchup. Now, Anthony Edwards. I've heard a lot of people, just throwing shade his way for his performance. What was he, like 3 of 15, something like that? He shot awfully. But contextually, I thought it was an impressive performance from young Ant, right? When he came down on that ankle a couple of weeks ago, I was like, his season is done. That was a gruesome ankle turn. And for him to get out there on that ankle, and then he goes down on the shoulder, he's got that all taped up, to go out there and try to lead this broken Wolves team, I thought was impressive. And the other thing that I liked about it was he didn't feel sorry for himself, because a lot of the time these guys, when they're hurt, every opportunity they get to let the audience and the camera know they're hurt, they do it, right? They miss a shot and they're like, oh, right. Or and they're showing, and it just brings the team down. And there was none of that from young Ant, right? He just tried to push through. Unfortunately, he was super inefficient. But he gets a pass for me when you put that context on his performance and what he was trying to do. I think the other interesting storyline, though, was from Lakers' side, D'Lo got benched. D'Lo got benched in the second half for Dennis Schroeder. Here's the thing with D'Angelo Russell, man. He's so talented, right? Teams are always enamored and they're like, hey, we'll bring him in and he can play on the ball, off the ball. He's a bit bigger for a guard. And so on paper, teams talk themselves into acquiring him. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, every team that he's on realizes when it's go time, when it matters, you can't really have him out on the floor. And that's what you saw last night from Darvin Ham, where Dennis Schroeder is almost the opposite, right? He has, I won't say opposite, but he can be erratic, right? And not as serious as you'd want him to be or consistent on a regular basis. But also, he has a track record of in the 16-game season, when it matters, he shows up. OKC, bubble Lakers, and then you saw it again last night, and Schroeder hits the biggest shot of the night and put pressure on this Wolves defense, and he can even defend when he wants to. I think that's the most annoying thing about him, but I expect to see that play out the rest of the Lakers' playoff journey, Schroeder over D'Lo, unless maybe D'Lo is super hot, right? You may give him a try, but this is what happens with him. Now, there was a series of mistakes both ways down the stretch, right? It was kind of a circus out there. A lot of people didn't like the LeBron when Taurean Prince shot the gap and stole the ball on the side out of bounds. I see that so much in high school basketball, all the way up to the pro level, right? Is if it's side out of bounds and you're coming up to the logo to get the ball, that if you don't shield off that defender, that's a steal like 9 out of 10 times, them shooting the gap. But here was the thing about that foul. Reggie Miller was saying, oh, it's a loose ball, it's a 50. Dude, first off, Prince gets a dunk if LeBron doesn't swan dive at his legs. And second of all, you can't reward that play. You cannot let guys dive at players' legs like that. It just has to be called. But yeah, I mean, the Wolves, we've seen this story as well. It doesn't seem to matter who's out there because you got Conley, you got Kyle Anderson out there, two vets who are very high IQ and controlled players, and they still shit the bed late in this game, and the Lakers advance to see this Memphis Grizzlies team. And boy, I'm excited about that one. I'm excited about that one because to me, that's a win-win scenario as a Warriors fan. One, you either get to see this obnoxious young Grizzlies team taunt and knock out LeBron in the first round and do they dance and all that stuff, or you're going to see the Lakers humble these young boys and come out of it. But either way, I think a pound of flesh will be drawn from either team that makes it out, and so all the more better for the Warriors. Now, the earlier game, Heat-Hawks. I think everybody in the world already had Miami written in pen against the Celtics in that 2-7 matchup. I think Jimmy Butler did too, right? Well, not so fast. The Atlanta Hawks come in there and really just controlled the entire game. I'm not sure if we should be so surprised about this, honestly, though, because this is kind of who Miami's been all year long. They've been disappointing, you know? And Lowry is the scapegoat. But I mean, I don't know why anybody thought at this stage in his career he would be anything more than he is. You know, I don't know about that. To me, and maybe this isn't fair, but Bam Adebayo is overrated. That's just the reality of it. Like he's nice, he's good. Like I'm not saying he's not a good fringe star player, but I don't ever want to hear his name in the same sentence with Embiid, Jokic, or Giannis. And it seems like Heat fans, they try to, I don't know. I think they think he's more than he is. You know what I'm saying? And so their 3-point shot variance is always an issue and what it boils down to. But they get shocked and knocked off at home and have to go face the winner of Chicago-Toronto. But let's talk a little bit about this Hawks team, right? Because the rumors have been swirling that Trae Young is on the trade block. They bring in Quinn Snyder. You know, John Collins has been on the trade block for like 3 years. They kind of remind me of the Pelicans East. And not that they're constructed the same, but in the sense of on paper, their talent levels should scare anybody in a matchup. Like, right? If they're healthy and things are clicking, they could beat anybody. And I feel the same way about the Pelicans when they're healthy. And so now they roll into this Boston series. And the Celtics, let's be honest, they've stumbled to the finish line here. Jaylen Brown's cut his shooting hand. And this looks like kind of a spooky series. I know if you ask the Celtics fans, they're probably going to say that they're relieved they don't have to see this Heat team. But I think when we look back in hindsight, that may not be how they feel after. Because this Hawks team, again, if they're DeJounte, Bojan, is it Bojan, Bogdan? One of them cats, right? Collins, Hunter to go at Tatum. They have the wings. Capella to match up with Rob Williams and Al Horford. And then Trae Young, listen, as young and as discombobulated as this team has been with their chemistry, as disappointing as they have been, look at their young history. That run to the Eastern Conference Finals, what was it, 2 years ago? Last year, they fought through the play-in to get into the playoffs. So they've got quite a bit of big game experience relative to how young their roster is. And then I think most importantly, Trae Young has shown he's comfortable being the villain on a big stage. You're telling me Trae Young isn't capable of going up to Boston and dropping 40 and taunting that crowd? Like, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be shocked if it did either. And so I think we're on upset alert in that 2-7 matchup from both coasts, whether it's Lakers-Memphis or Hawks-Celtics. I think the upset in the first round is going to come out of the 2-7 matchup. I'm not huge on picks, but if you're looking for my Warriors-Kings pick, I just dropped a video yesterday. You can go check that out. It's pretty thorough. But let's talk Clippers-Suns here, 4-5 matchup. And, you know, it goes without saying, listen, if Paul George was there, that changes the equation. You know, and he's a good enough player where he changes the equation of any series, obviously. But when you look at Booker and Durant in particular and having to deal with those two, they sure could have used PG, right? Now, it sounds like, you know, if they can extend the series, maybe we will see Paul George. But ultimately, you know, Norm Powell, as feisty as he is and as deep as this Clippers team is, I'm not sure they have enough firepower against this Suns team. And I also question the Clippers' leadership. If you want to be honest, you saw Plumlee and Bones Highland get into it. What was it? It was Easter Sunday. It was all sorts of smoke on the sidelines, right? But they got chirping. And you know, let's be honest, that's Kawhi's greatest weakness. He's not a leader. He doesn't say anything. Leadership matters. And I think Kawhi has gotten a pass for that, and it's been masked from his destinations. First, he's with the big three and Pop. You don't need him to lead. He goes to Toronto, where you got Kyle Lowry and Nick Nurse, right? And then in the Clippers, they haven't done anything. So anyway, I digress. I don't want to get off on a Kawhi rant, but I question their leadership, and I question if they have enough firepower without Paul George against this Suns team. From the Suns' perspective, what I'm curious to see is how they deal with Chris Paul. And I guess it goes back to the Clippers. Listen, we know Ty Lue is a matchup-based coach. He's going to spot a weak spot and attack it until they change something. So I want to see how well the Clippers can exploit Chris Paul defensively, whether that's Westbrook taking him into the paint and telling him he's too small, Powell cooking him on switches, Bones Highland, right? They've got a lot of weapons, but they don't have an identity or consistent weapons. You don't know who it's going to be night to night outside of Kawhi Leonard. But if they can exploit Chris Paul, what is Monty's counter to that? Is Chris Paul pulled off the floor during clutch moments in this series where it's like, look, he's the hole in the defense, and offensively, we don't really need him to set the table because we've got Slim and Book. And so that's what I'll be looking for in that 4-5 matchup. But ultimately, without Paul George, I got to go Suns in 6. Moving over to the East, the 4-5 matchup, Knicks-Cavs. That's a pick 'em. I should say Cavs-Knicks, right? Cavs are the 4 seed. They got home court. That's got to be a pick 'em, right? That's a tough one here. Now, Julius Randle, ankle roll has been out. I didn't see it or how severe it is, but it sounds like he'll be ready for game 1. You'd imagine he's going to struggle in the paint against that Cleveland front court of Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And what that's going to do is push him out and play more on the perimeter. And that's where he is just so up and down, right? He could go 0 of 8 from 3, or he could hit 6 or 7 of them. His shot variance is going to be a big factor in this series if he's feeling good from the perimeter, because I don't think he's going to have a lot of success in the paint against that big Cleveland front line. But you talk about the Knicks, their toughness and their depth, right? They've been impressive, really, the whole second half of this season, and they've kind of got a mojo. Brunson, they've got a leadership, they've got some experience, even though this is kind of a newly put together team. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, and as close as this is going to be, you imagine there's going to be a lot of late game close situations. And that's where I have to lean towards Cleveland when you look at Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. And so I think this thing's going to go 7, but I'm going to take the Cavs because ball in the hands of your playmaker late. I trust Don and Garland over Brunson and Barrett. What have I not covered here? I guess I'm kind of all over the place in this breakdown. I guess 3-6 in the East. Sixers, Nets. Is it a gentleman's sweep, right? You would hope that the Sixers would take care of business here in this very pressure-filled offseason for them. Harden, what is his condition? A sore Achilles is kind of vague and weird, right? But, their goal has to be to get out of there unscathed. You cannot have Embiid and Harden limping or missing any type of action this early in the playoffs. From Brooklyn's perspective, I'm curious to see, we've seen Bridges take this step with them since the trade, right? But it is the end of the regular season. Can he be a true go-to scorer on the playoff stage? Can he give Philly a 40-piece and steal a game for Brooklyn? That's what I'll be looking for in this matchup. But anything beyond that, I'm not sure how competitive it will be. And honestly, I'm rooting for the Sixers to get through unscathed just because I don't want the injury excuse for them. I want to see what's what with them this season in the playoffs. All right, I think I'm going to wrap this thing up. I'll be back with more playoff takes and more videos as we pick this thing up as the big dance starts Saturday. Get your popcorn and hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.